Kia ora, I'm Claire Gallop. I'm the Manager of Policy and Compliance for the University of Otago. They asked me to be the MC because we take compliance with the rules very seriously in the 3-minute thesis. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2019 University of Otago 3-minute thesis finals. I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience today. I'd like to welcome the contestants. I'd like to welcome our judges. I'd like to welcome people on the live stream and people of the future. The 3-minute thesis celebrates the exciting research that we do at the University of Otago. It celebrates, in fact, the exciting research that PhD and master's candidates from around the world do. We're just lucky enough to be hearing our own university's researchers. It was developed by the University of Queensland in 2008, and the competition is designed to cultivate the communication skills of our PhD and master's candidates and to foster an interest in the research, the very exciting research that we do amongst lay audiences. Presenting in the 3-minute thesis competition increases our capacity to effectively explain the research that we're involved in to people who aren't embedded in it on a daily basis. In 3 minutes, we are asked to do something that's really tough, to explain highly technical, highly specialised and highly important research in a simplified, brief manner. We're only allowed one PowerPoint slide, and we're allowed no props. No props. The idea for this competition came about in 2008 after a drought in Queensland. Everybody was reducing their water usage, and all the students had been given an egg timer for a 3-minute shower. The then Dean of the university's graduate research school put 2 and 2 together and came up with the 3-minute thesis competition. If from a drought you put 2 and 2 together and come up with a 3-minute thesis competition, whatever professor he was in, it was clearly not in numeracy. So in those simpler and smellier times, that competition was only for Australia, but it has extended out as its popularity has grown, and it is now over 600 universities and 65 countries worldwide. The 3MT is a fantastic event. It is always a highlight of the graduate research calendar. Is this the first event or the second event of the calendar this month? First event? Oh my God, okay, seven. Okay, it's a fun event, as I mentioned earlier, but it's much, much more than that. In the years that I've been associated with the 3MT, I've noticed 3 things. The first is that the contestants keep getting younger. The second is that the font on my run sheet keeps needing to get larger. And the third is that the research just keeps improving. It's exciting, it's interesting, and it is engaging. And I have no doubt that the group of contestants that we have here today will just continue to go in that positive trajectory. Research at Otago is clearly in safe hands. Being able to conduct research on something that you love is an incredible privilege. It is a real thrill to be able to spend a lot of time, although sometimes it doesn't feel that thrilling, but to be able to spend a lot of time on doing something that you are passionate about. It is a privilege in our working lives. It is a privilege in our studying lives. Our graduate research candidates are future academics, they're future captains of industry, they're our future researchers and our future leaders. I'm confident that the thesis candidates are of a world-class standard. I'm also confident that they are receiving world-class supervision in a world-class university. It's always inspiring to hear the creative way that our graduate research candidates communicate something as complicated as their research in a small amount of time. The 3MT provides an incredible development opportunity for us all. It fosters important skills of clarity and brevity. This is a skill that will last you a lifetime, whether it's an elevator pitch for a job you're interested in, or whether you're trying to win an argument with your teenager. It's always important to keep it brief. Preparing a 3-minute presentation always serves to reunite your passion and enthusiasm, in my experience, for your research. Simplifying our research and communicating it as clearly as possible makes us remember why we started this in the first place, why we are going about doing this endeavour, what we loved about our disciplines and what we love about the work that we're doing. As a staff member getting involved in this competition, it provides a lovely opportunity to witness the enthusiasm, the passion and the cleverness of our many thesis candidates firsthand. Tonight we have 4 masters and 7 PhD students competing. They've all fought off stiff competition in their departments and divisions to be here tonight. The winner of our Masters section will get to compete in the New Zealand Inter-University National Masters competition in Dunedin later this month. And the winner of the Doctoral section will go on to travel to Brisbane to compete in the Asia Pacific 3MT final at the University of Queensland in October. There's also a People's Choice Award, which will cover both the Masters and PhD student sections, so you'll get to have your say as well as listening to what the judges think. In your program, you'll find a tear-off strip. Please hand this at the end of all the presentations to one of the graduate research ambassadors. Wave to us, graduate research ambassadors. Yay! They will be coming and collecting them while the judges are doing their deliberations. Okay, so that's a little bit by way of introduction of the competition. I'll do some housekeeping now. As I understand it, and I've only been in the job a short time, the University of Otago's Manager of Policy and Compliance means that I, in this role, have almost dictatorial powers to make you do what I want you to do. So listen up, okay? Emergency exits here, there, and at the back. If there was a fire, in a case of a fire, we would go down the stairs at the main stairs that you came in. Do not use a lift. We're really lucky to find the lift in this building, actually. But do not use a lift, and we will meet between the clock tower and this building here. In case of an earthquake, maybe move more towards the car park, actually, but that's probably my own riffing on that health and safety announcement. There are bathrooms downstairs on the first floor as we came up, just by the stairs. Try to find any other ones around here. Again, I think you're going to get lost, so don't do that. Cell phones, please check your cell phones are switched to silent or preferably off. You are allowed to take a video or photo discreetly. Sharon, discreetly, okay? All right. Please do not get in the way of the recording that is being made at the back of the room. Our lovely competitors, bear in mind that there are going to be photos at the end of this, and so I'd like you to stay behind at the end to have a group photo too. Competitors should be aware that the videos and photos that are taken could be used for publicity purposes. It's too late now to complain about that, isn't it, while you're sitting there waiting nervously. But in any event, if you do have any questions or concerns, please come and see me at one of the breaks. In terms of our sponsorship, we're very fortunate that tonight's event has been sponsored by Hello World Dunedin. Hello World have generously donated a number of travel prizes for tonight's contestants, including travel to the next stage of the competition for the doctoral winner. I guess they could get you a taxi to the Masters competition. No, they've also got a prize actually for that too. Okay. I sense that you're hearing enough from me. I'll introduce the judges panel and then we'll get started very soon. When I'm required to introduce people who have had distinguished careers and have accomplished so much, I throw up a little in my mouth, I'll be honest with you. Today is no exception. It makes me sick. I, however, have devised a little technique for coping with the queasiness that I feel by their achievements as successes and the clear evidence and results of their careers. That technique is to lie. Yes, I tell stories. That's my tip for you too, if you're ever in a situation where you have to introduce people and you can feel your bile raising. Channel your petty jealousy through just making nonsense up. No one's ever going to suspect, no one's ever going to tell. But that's my tip from you. So without further ado, the first judge I'd like to introduce you to is Rachel. Professor Rachel Spronken-Smith. Wave, Rachel, wave. Excellent. Rachel is a professor in higher education and geography and also the dean of the Graduate Research School at the University of Otago. She if it's to be believed, initially trained as a geographer, doing her PhD in geography at the University of British Columbia. She specialised in urban climatology, with her research involving cycling, driving or flying around urban areas, measuring the climatic effects of urban green space. She's also interested in microclimates and where it might be best to grow wine. She's a tippler. After becoming a climate denier, Rachel, we've talked about this, Rachel was drummed out of geography, and in the last 15 years, she switched into higher education. She's a past head of the Higher Education Development Centre, where she worked as an academic staff developer. Rachel came to the Graduate Research School in 2012. As Dean of the school, she still finds time to continue to supervise PhD students. Rachel is passionate about giving students the best possible curricular experiences while at university. She's won plenty of awards for her teaching and her supervision, and I'm too bitter to mention those here tonight. Rachel has a particular interest in research as a high-impact experience. I hope that involves less hitting than I imagine. And tonight is looking very much forward to enjoying some of that research. Please give Rachel a big warm... Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Associate Professor Lisa McNeill. Lisa is an academic in the Department of Marketing in the Division of Commerce. Lisa is the Associate Dean Postgraduate Research for the Otago Business School and was the Director of the International Business Program for 4 years. Lisa began her academic career in the arts with an interest in postmodern literature and the human condition, before, according to her BA professors, turning to the dark side of commerce. I'm sure the commerce professors would say before realising she needed a job. Lisa completed her PhD research in a number of Asian countries and has researched a variety of interesting consumer phenomena. These days, Lisa researches what we buy and why we buy it, examining such varied topics as why we buy sugary, fatty, but oh-so-yummy foods. It's because they're oh-so-yummy. And why we go into debt for fashion. If I'm to believe her biography, she has an interest in men who moisturise and wear skinny jeans. I got that right, didn't I? Oh well, horses for courses. Lisa says she is looking forward to the research tonight and in the spirit of promoting her local economy is willing to be bribed. A word of warning though, she'll be looking out carefully for any subliminal messages and advertising in the presentations tonight, so watch out. Thank you very much. Please give Lisa a warm round of applause. Finally, David Hay. David is a Dunedin screenwriter. According to the biography I received, David Hay is a Scotsman with vision. It's excellent. He's worked as an editor, a podcaster, a producer, a director, and a writer of natural history stories. More recently, he's turned to cinema dramas of the humankind, because humans will do what they're told while animals will not. Not in my house, David, not in my house. I thought this bio was a likely story, so I Googled him. I wish I hadn't. Just like Rachel and Lisa, David has accomplishments and achievements. Amongst other things, David worked at Natural History New Zealand for over 4 years, and prior to that, mistaking it for a Scottish talent quest, he worked on Campbell Live for 2 years. You can see one of David's award-winning short films, Cold Fish, at this year's film festival. Well, I take it you can, I can't, I've been trespassed, but enjoy it, it has spectacular reviews. David's looking forward to hearing the great research and then leaving a little early to avoid hearing the movie pitches I might have for him. Policy and Compliance, a love story. Don't worry, David, I can email you the details. It's our great pleasure to have you here tonight. Please welcome him. Okay, the rules. We're nearly there, everyone. We're nearly at the point at which you start hearing the things that you've actually come to hear. But policy and compliance, I've got to go through the rules. Okay, so one single static PowerPoint. That's all. That slide is the only thing that's permitted. No slide transitions, no animations, whoosh, no movement or any description of kind are allowed. The slide is to be presented from the beginning of the oration. No additional electronic media, e.g. sound and video files, are permitted. No additional props, e.g. costumes or musical instruments, laboratory equipment, they're not allowed either. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Now this is a key one. Susan, our lovely timekeeper, thank you, Susan. Susan will have the official countdown. She will show you a sign, 30 seconds. Whoa. At that point, you have 30 seconds to go. Then she will show you another sign, 10 seconds. Ditto. There's a theme, 10 seconds to go. Then she will go, at that sound, no more. Middle of a sentence, zip it. Don't say anything, okay? The moment you're over that, sadly, we have to disqualify you, and nobody wants that. Presentations are to be spoken word, no poems, no rap songs or limericks or any other things like that. And presentations are to commence from the stage. I think that means this bit, okay? Presentations are considered to have commenced when a presenter starts their presentation through either movement or speech, okay? The decision of the judging panel is final. All right. What are the criteria? The first criteria for judging are comprehension and content. Did the presentation provide an understanding of the background and the significance of the research question being addressed, while explaining terminology and avoiding jargon? Did the presentation clearly describe the impact and/or results of the research, including conclusions and outcomes? Did the presentation follow a clear and logical sequence? Was the thesis topic, research significance, results and impact, outcomes, communicated in a language appropriate for this communication for a non-specialist audience? Did the presenter spend adequate time on each element of their presentation, or did it seem elaborate, too long, or was one aspect of it rushed? Engagement and communication. Did the oration make the audience want to know more? I know you're all wanting to know more about policy and compliance, so it's that kind of thing. Was the presenter careful not to trivialise or generalise their research? Did the presenter convey enthusiasm for their research? Did they capture and maintain the audience's attention? Did they have sufficient stage presence, eye contact and vocal range, maintain a steady pace and have a confident stance? Was the PowerPoint slide enhancing of the presentation, was it clear and concise? Judges will give individual feedback after each presentation. So once you've delivered your speech, please just stay here and I'll pass the mic to the judges and they will go through and give you some feedback. Before the presentations begin, I want to invite you to ponder two things. The first is what a huge accomplishment it is to get to the finals of the 3MT. Taking an average speaking time of 150 words per minute, your standard PhD candidate would require over 11 hours to read aloud their thesis. And that's not thinking about the footnotes, the appendices, or toilet breaks. The average master's candidates would take 4.5 hours. By the same measure, reading all the errors in Donald Trump's tweets would take the rest of my life. Clearly considering all this deep thinking, and I mean the thesis candidates, not Donald Trump's, this is a massive challenge to try and condense your work into 3 minutes, and the finalists have done brilliantly to get this far. The second thing I'd like you to ponder is the notion of time and how quickly or slowly we perceive that time to pass. 3 minutes. What does 3 minutes seem like? If I read out all the names of the university's policies, procedures and guidelines, it would take me just under 3 minutes. However, I sense it would seem like an eternity to you. For me, though, it would fly by. Shall we try it? A is for academic dress statute and academic integrity policy and academic progress policy. No, I won't do any more. Yesterday I sat in a cafe with a friend and we were trying to guess how long 3 minutes took to pass. We did this a number of times, we were wrong every time, but we had a really good lunch hour together. 3 minutes is a really long time if you're walking through campus with your skirt tucked into your undies, trust me. However, it's an incredibly short period of time when you're trying to explain your years of research. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first contestant from the Masters section. Okay. Fantastic. Jonah, if you'd like to come down here. You're all wired up? Okay, brilliant. Okay, here we have from the Department of Zoology, Jonah Belk. He is talking about his thesis topic, modelling the passive dynamics of spider locomotion through robotic design. Tell me when you're ready, Jonah, and I will press the button. You're ready? Yeah. No, it's okay.
I can say stuff. Okay, cool.
You can tell me you're ready.
All right.
Now?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay.
Today, we're all accustomed to seeing those buzzing YouTube video headlines. The future is now. Robot Oz. And as promised, we clicked on the YouTube video, and out strolls a little robot, kicks a ball, serves a cup of tea. Wow! The movements are impressive, but there's still that underlying problem of clunkiness. The movements are completely power-driven, not fluid or natural like a human being's. After all, it's not exactly a compliment to say to your friend, hey, bro, you dance like a robot. So how do we tackle this problem of clunkiness? This is where my research comes in. I studied the biomechanics and locomotion of spiders. We understand that efficient movement is key to an animal's survival in the wild. Efficient movement allows an animal to move adaptively and with endurance through its environment. Efficient movement takes advantage of the pendulum-like qualities of its skeletal muscle design and couples it with the elasticity of its tendons and muscles. Consider for a moment that the human leg is like a pendulum. As it moves from high to low, making contact with the ground and carrying on, it recaptures most of the energy. Now compare this to a generic robot's gait, which is mostly power-driven in its joints and from an onboard computer. And most of that energy is dissipated into the environment, inefficient. These passive qualities I've outlined can be found in most legged creatures, from larger animals, such as ourselves, humans, down to 8 little critters like spiders. Currently, I'm building and modeling an 8-legged runner that has these same passive, bouncy qualities, as can be seen here in my CAD design. Using only stretchy plastic joints and springs, we 3D print these little 8-legged runners that use very little battery power. This is in stark contrast to current robots, which have massive batteries to feed power-hungry computers. But you may be wondering, why build a model that has 8 legs when you could be building it based off of something that's more generic, more recognizable like a human being? For a couple of reasons. One, spiders are innately very stable. So if we're trying to mimic or build in their biomechanics, we know they won't topple over, say like a bipedal robot. Second, spiders are nimble and fast, ideal characteristics for a robot. This robot that I'm designing will be cost-effective, efficient, and can be mass-produced very quickly, say to be used for disaster relief after an earthquake, for example. Concluding, I argue that we can build better bio-inspired robots that move more naturally and more bouncy, to be quite honest. These robots will use far less processing power, less computing power, lending to an overall lighter, more naturally moving robot. Let us take a step back to fully understand animal locomotion and biomechanics so that we can take a step forward in robotic design. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. That was a great start. You've set the bar right up here, so well done on that. Once I got over my repulsion of actually seeing that spider and focused on the robotic side, it was great. Excellent body language, very engaging start, nice link to the impacts of the research, so well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic, especially in the really difficult position of first up. I agree with Rachel. I loved your body language and particularly the hand gestures. I like that you linked what you're talking about to the little spider movements as we went along. You've made really good statements of what we in marketing call unique selling propositions for what you were doing. They were memorable, cost, efficiency, usage, and I love that you ended with a tagline, something that's going to stick in our memories.
Do you want to invest?
You were listening to Claire.
Okay, I work in the arts, so I definitely won't be investing in anything. So, I thought that you started really beautifully by giving us an example from everyday life that we could all immediately relate to with something obviously like robotics, which is not part of our everyday lives particularly. And I also thought that one of the great things that you see in a nice story well told is that when the audience has a question, that it's answered almost immediately, which is what you did very nicely there. Like when you told us of uses of this, I was going, what could you use it for? And then there you go, you answered it. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was great. Did I understand correctly, though, that robot dancing isn't cool? All right, I'm going to change my style up then, I think. Next up, we have Maddie McIntyre-Wilson. Maddie is doing an MSc in the Department of Biochemistry and Health Sciences Division. Her thesis is on investigating combination gene and drug therapies as potential treatments for CLN6 Batten's disease in children. Maddie's supervisors are Associate Professor Stephanie Hughes. Maddie, give me the word when you are ready. I'll lurch this way. Please give her a warm welcome.
Yep. Most of you here today will know about neurodegeneration. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's. All of these awful diseases are examples of accelerated brain cell death, aka neurodegeneration in adults. Some of you may even have witnessed firsthand that slow and terrible cognitive decline in a loved one. Their loss of memories, of speech and motor skills, of everything that makes them them. Can you even imagine being a parent and seeing those same symptoms in your very young child? That's what's faced by parents of children affected by a rare neurodegenerative disorder called Batten disease. Now, Batten disease isn't just one disease, it's many. We know of 14 types caused by mutations in different genes, and every one of them is a genetic death sentence. The molecular mechanisms behind Batten disease are complicated, but the overarching concepts don't have to be. In a healthy person, every cell in the human body represents a balanced ecosystem, a tidy and functional student flat, if you will. The flatmates in this metaphor are proteins, tiny molecules within the cell that ensure day-to-day cellular processes run smoothly. In Batten disease, however, the proteins encoded by mutated CLN genes are the flatmates assigned to taking out the trash and recycling. And frankly, they're not pulling their weight. Over time, waste builds up in the flat, and it becomes an unpleasant place to live. Eventually, the situation gets so bad that the flat is condemned and the cell dies. Now, if this occurs in a normal body cell, it's not too problematic. We've got plenty of other cells to replace it. But the central nervous system is made up of specialized cells called neurons, which are far harder to replace, and this is what causes that neurodegeneration. My lab is studying a particular type of Batten disease called CLN6. Like all forms of Batten's, CLN6 Batten disease has no cure. Parents are told to take their children home, love them, and let them die. But we need to be able to tell them something better, so I'm researching 2 potential therapies for CLN6 Batten disease. The first is gene therapy, where we essentially replace the mutated gene within the neuron with a healthy copy, trading out that slack flatmate for one who does their chores. The second involves repurposing drugs already used on the market today to upregulate, which means to kickstart and motivate those waste management and recycling pathways. We hope to combine these therapies to really boost brain recycling and waste management power and to provide hope for a long-lasting and comprehensive treatment for CLN6 Batten disease. Thank you.
I thought you did a lovely job of showing us the importance and the necessity of the research. That was a really big part of your presentation, I think, which worked really well. Also, it's complicated, obviously. So you used an analogy, which I thought worked really well, and I loved how you came back to it later on when you said replace the rubbish flatmate for a new one. I think that was a good tactic.
Yes, thank you. Love the analogy. Good eye contact with the audience. I also really enjoyed the slide too and the way that complemented what you were talking about in terms of the 2 treatments. So, well done. Great presentation.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the way that you used emotive elements to embed the topic, particularly with a lay audience. I felt that you actually tied what you're talking about to the world outside of the lab, which I think for those of us who haven't worked in laboratories, we really appreciate. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Our next contestant is also doing an MSc from the Department of Zoology and Sciences Division. Megha Sethi is looking at the effects of seasonal water abstraction for irrigation on, benthic, I can't even read, invertebrates of the, and I'm not going to be able to say this either.
Manuherikia.
Thank you. River system, New Zealand. I need you around in my life all the time. This is just awesome. What was I thinking? Fantastic. Please all give her a warm welcome.
In this panorama of my field site in central Otago, taken in March 2019, you can see that more than 50% of the naturalized flow is directed into an irrigation canal, which supports farms of sheep, cattle, and fruit orchards of export quality. With the current permits that the farmers have, they're not even restricted to take 100% of that water. Downstream of that take, the width of the river, the depth of the river, and the flow velocity are considerably reduced, leaving residents of the river, like the fish and invertebrates, to grapple with, fight for survival for the 5-month irrigation period. Luckily for Manuherikia River, in 1991, the New Zealand government passed the Resource Management Act, to comply with which Otago Regional Council is monitoring, putting minimum flow limits on the amount of water that can be abstracted, and renewing these age-old mining permits that allow such exploitative abstraction by 2021. So I, in 2019, took my net and my sampling equipment to 3 of such diversions of the 213 on Manuherikia River, collected invertebrate samples. Invertebrates are animals that lack the vertebral column, for example, snails, insects, earthworms, crustaceans. I collected them from downstream of the river and downstream of the take and upstream of the take 3 times, when the river was at its lowest in March, when the water abstraction was stopped in May, and in June again. I took these to my lab, identified and counted each one of them, calculated their abundances and diversity richness, and related them to flow parameters. Preliminary results show that throughout the 3 samplings, the abundance was lower in the downstream of the take. Invertebrates reflect the health of the ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem, and are the food source for the fish, game fish, for example, trout and eels, and is also native galaxids. What my results cannot do is solve the problem of water abstraction or minimum flow setting, but it's giving a scientific foundation to the policymakers to do the same. Just like with any world problem, any world issue like poverty or terrorism, it's the joint effort of the scientific community, the stakeholders like the Otago Regional Council, and the stakeholders like farmers, governing body like the Otago Regional Council, to come together to sustainably, judiciously preserve our freshwater resources. Thank you.
You've got a wonderful level of enthusiasm for your topic. I really could tell that you're really passionate about this and passionate about making a difference. I also really enjoyed that you outlined how important your topic is very, very early in the presentation, so we were really clear what it was you were going to talk about and why we needed to hear about it. Well done.
Yeah, I would certainly concur with the passion and animation that you showed with the topic was definitely infectious. I got particularly engaged when you spoke about the importance of the invertebrates to the ecosystem. If I was going to give you some advice, I would consider bringing that earlier in the presentation, and that might have got me going a bit sooner as well.
Thank you. Yeah, great passion. I thought it was good background to the problem, and your methods were really well described. And to hear those results too and the impacts, that sort of just drew it all together. And great interaction with the slide too. So brilliant. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a kitten at home and he keeps bringing in invertebrates. It'll be quite good to get some testing and actually some elimination, I think, from his coat. There's quite a lot of slugs, ladybirds and various other disgusting creatures stuck to him at the moment. The next person that we have up is Rebecca. Rebecca Kennedy-Perkins. Her supervisor is Sophie Bond, and today she's talking about greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture. Should we give a cow? I'll head off and you can give me the nod for when you're ready, Rebecca.
That wasn't it, but yeah.
That wasn't the nod?
No, that was not the nod.
Is that the nod?
That's the nod. Aotearoa has a very unique emissions profile. Methane accounts for over 42% of gross emissions, and the majority of these come from agriculture. Yet there is a lack of any real, practicable and workable strategies towards the reduction of this gas. This becomes important when considering that of the three main greenhouse gases, methane is the second most potent behind that of nitrous oxide. Therefore, through my research, I intend to work collaboratively with farmers in order to produce these sorts of strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture. Now, when I talk about potency, I'm talking about the global warming potential held by each gas. So, this is the term given to the amount of warming a gas has over a certain period of time in comparison to that of carbon dioxide. So the global warming potential of carbon dioxide is 1, and the global warming potential of methane is 28 to 36 times that of carbon dioxide. And this global warming potential is why we should give a cow about greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture. This is an intractable problem in part caused by the dominant discourses surrounding environmental management in agriculture and the importance of safeguarding our economy. Last year, agriculture contributed over $42 billion in export revenue and supplied over 350,000 jobs to Aotearoa. So change within the sector presents a very real possibility of harming our economy. But this is not just an economic dilemma. This is a dilemma centred upon livelihoods. It is our farmers who will be negatively affected by changes within the sector. And not long ago, farmers were seen as our national heroes, and intensification was encouraged. Yet we are seeing the increasing vilification of farmers and them being heralded as the destroyers of our natural environment. But farmers need to be mobilised, and this mobilisation is going to occur at the grassroots level. Farmers influencing farmers and farmers supporting farmers. And I am not saying that government intervention is not necessary, nor that it will not be accepted. But it must be understood that this is their land, and farmers know their land. This is why I have begun my master's research, and I will soon begin working collaboratively with farmers in order to produce these strategies of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture. I'll be using the qualitative methodology of the co-production of knowledge, which instead of extracting information from participants, you co-produce knowledge and work with participants. No matter how small we may be as a nation, this is no excuse for inaction. And no one group can be persecuted because the burden is deemed to fall within their sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I love part of the graphic there, very catching. It was quite a busy slide, but I love the graphic on it. I enjoyed how you clearly outlined the importance of the problem. It really took us to the crux of it and the methane and the impact on, greenhouse gases and the role of agriculture. So I think I was left wanting to know more, and that's absolutely the key of these presentations, so thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. I felt a really, really clear empathy from you for people who have livelihoods that are tied up with such a complex issue, and I came away with a real sense of positivity from your presentation. So I do applaud that. And as someone who really likes the treatment of participants in research as co-researchers or co-participants, I loved your methodology too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that point. I enjoyed that you opened up with giving us a picture of a complex real world that you were going to try and tackle. Again, I would like to know more about what the research was actually going to involve.
Thank you. Wow, what an impressive group of students doing fantastic research and getting up and communicating it so clearly. Please all give them one more round of applause. Well done. That's brilliant. Okay, so that concludes the Masters presentations. I'm going to send the judges off to do some deliberating. Watching you, don't take any bribes, Lisa. You can invest afterwards, but no bribes right now. We'll send them off, and then we can have a break and talk amongst yourselves. Start thinking about that People's Choice Award. Whoa. Okay, everyone. You're all sorted, judges? Judges are sorted. Contestants, are you all sorted? Hey! We got some of them wandering around. Alrighty. Okay, I think we're all sorted then. The audience, are you sorted? Excellent. Okay, well, let's continue on to the doctoral candidates then. We have 7 doctoral candidates in this section, I think from memory. 11 minus 4 is 7, if my maths serves me correct. The first up, we have Cassie. Well, it's whatever you want, really.
Typically it's Cassie.
Yeah. Stilianaru. I think I've got that wrong too. Casey is from the Department of Pathology and Biomedical Science and Health Sciences Division. Her supervisors are Dr. Logan Walker, Associate Professor John Pearson, and Vanessa Lattimore, and she will be talking about unravelling the genetic variants underlying inherited endometrial cancer risk. I'll lurch over this way and you give me the wink when you're ready.
I can't wink, but
Okay.
I'll blink extra
Neither
hard.
can I.
Destiny. A word that brings to mind fortune tellers, crystal balls, and one that's often dismissed for a lack of scientific validation. But I believe that destiny is rooted in science. Some people are destined to be tall, others to be short. These things aren't mystical, it's encoded in our DNA. We each carry 2 copies of every gene, one from our mum, the other from our dad. However, sometimes we inherit too many or not enough copies of these genes, and we call these copy number variations. And some of these can play a big part in designing your genetic destiny. So my question is, how can I harness the power of a genetic destiny to help combat cancer? Or more specifically, how can I help the 380,000 women worldwide who are expected to develop endometrial cancer each and every year? Endometrial cancer occurs in the lining of a woman's uterus, and some women are born with a genetic predisposition to developing the disease. For women carrying this risk, it's like walking around the top of a cliff, blindfolded. The longer they remain unaware of this risk and keep on walking, the far more likely they are to stumble off. But if we know the genetic change is responsible, we can start to map their path and work towards steering them away from that cliff edge with prevention strategies. We have access to genetic data from over 20,000 women from all around the world, making this the largest study of its kind ever conducted. And these women form 2 groups, those that have developed endometrial cancer and those that haven't. And using this data, we compare the two groups by asking the same single question billions of times. Which bits of DNA are unique to the women who have developed endometrial cancer? Now, the final output ends up looking a lot like a Manhattan skyline. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of information, but we're after those Empire State Buildings. These are our genetic crystal balls. These point us to locations where those copy number variants I spoke about earlier occur more commonly among the women who have developed cancer. We now have genetic landmarks that allow us to zoom in and start asking why. Why do copy number variants in these genes predispose a woman to developing cancer? What is it about them that steers her towards that cliff? My hope is that we stop waiting for women to stumble off the cliff before stepping in to help. I think that we can and we should do better. If we understand the genetics underlying endometrial cancer risk, we can take off those blindfolds and start putting safety barriers up for those women that need it. Thank you.
Lovely storytelling. Thank you very much. I loved how you started with a kind of a magical wonderland to get us hooked in. And you also, obviously, were talking about genetics, which is not a very visual subject, but you used imagery really strongly throughout that whole presentation. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. Great storytelling there. You hooked us in nicely, and I really loved the slide and how that linked to your talk. I thought it was really well paced and great body language.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cassie. I thought you were a really good example of someone focusing on promise and potential instead of negativity in a really serious subject. So I felt that your enthusiasm was really catching and that, yes, we can do what you said we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Sherry McConville. Now, Sherry, is Sherry the first professional doctorate to come to a final with a 3-minute thesis? Yeah. So that's awesome. So for those of you who don't know, the vast majority of doctoral students at the university are PhD students, but we also have professional doctoral students as well. And so it's fantastic to have one of those here with us today. Sherry is talking about No One Left Behind, Adventure for Everyone. She is doing a Doctor of Business Administration. I'm going to lurch this way, past you. You tip me the wink.
I'll give you the wink. Okay.
Give me the wink.
Okay.
I've got to look at you to get the wink.
Okay, right. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, in the words of Martin Luther King, I have a dream to create an adventure hub right here in the heart of Dunedin. An adventure hub for people of all abilities, spread over acres of natural bush, containing things like a mudslide, zip line, obstacle course, and many of the other things that you can see up here in the picture. That the concept be based on 3 key principles: environmental conservation or even regeneration, health and well-being, because it's about getting people like you out and active in the great outdoors. But most importantly, this is about social equity. This is about creating a space for everybody, no matter their physical ability, no matter their age and stage in life, no matter their level of income. But this is just my big, hairy, audacious goal, based on the inequality and the inaccessibility that I see some people experiencing. Plus, I didn't know if this is the type of adventure that our community would want. The purpose of my research was to therefore find out and to answer the question, how can we develop a sustainable adventure hub in Dunedin for people of all abilities? There were 3 phases to the research. In the first, I interviewed Dunedin residents to find out what adventure means for them, and I showed them a prototype. They fed back, and that led to the development of this second prototype here. Next, I looked at successful adventure businesses up and down the country and also internationally
I interviewed, observed, and participated to understand their key success factors. And then thirdly, I interviewed key stakeholders to see how we could collaborate to make this thing happen. Using themes as the basis of analysis, what I found was that those key stakeholders are interested in helping. That the best business model for us in Dunedin is a community-owned asset rather than a for-profit enterprise. And that not only are Dunedin residents excited about this idea, they have a thirst for adventure, and no matter what their ability. But there are barriers such as time, cost, and physical access. So, I have a dream to create an adventure hub right here in the heart of Dunedin for people of all abilities, whether they're in a wheelchair or an Olympic-level athlete, so that no one is left behind. Thank you.
To get into trouble with Claire by saying, isn't she wonderful, she's from Commerce?
Would you like to invest?
Would I like to invest? Well, one thing I will say is, in watching your presentation, that you're a great salesperson. You sold the room on your vision, and you sold the room on your catchphrase around that dream. So I'm looking forward to seeing that dream come to fruition.
Thank you, Cherie. Yep, great engaging start. You drew us in, quite a lot of background, but then you got to actually what you were doing, and I love that crafting of the story too, where again return to the dream at the end. So, thanks.
Yeah, I agree. The nice little symmetry in your presentation there, where you started with the dream and ended with the dream, and then you listed your 3 factors somewhere in the kind of middle beginning. And the 3rd factor seemed really key to me, and I wondered if you wanted to bring that up higher, bring it up earlier. That might help a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cherie. Great presentation. I'm not sold on the zip lining, though. I think me and a zip line, some serious issues are going to occur, but it could be funny to watch, I guess. Next up, we have Jason Chua. He is from the Department of Surgical Sciences, and his supervisors are Professor Haxby Abbott, Professor Paul Hanson, and Andrew Briggs. And his presentation tonight is on aligning recommended knee osteoarthritis interventions with what people want. Fantastic. Welcome.
Hi.
I'll move over here and then I'll press the button for you.
First-line interventions for managing osteoarthritis, such as self-management and education programs and exercise programs, are consistently recommended across clinical practice guidelines for managing osteoarthritis. Yet these interventions are not routinely practiced or systematically delivered across the health system. Rather, as seen centre left of the slide, second-line interventions, namely drug therapies, and third-line interventions, joint replacement, receive far more attention in practice. This imbalance could be caused by what these stakeholders are thinking when they're choosing or recommending osteoarthritis interventions. Aligning what people want with what is recommended for managing osteoarthritis could help close this evidence practice gap. My research has focused on what drives the choice of osteoarthritis interventions and which interventions people want based on these drivers. How have I done this? In the first phase of my thesis, I used qualitative methods and identified 8 attributes of interventions that stakeholders consider when choosing or recommending osteoarthritis interventions. This information informed the second phase of my research, where I measured the importance of those 8 attributes by asking the same stakeholders across the health system to make trade-offs between the attributes. The results, as seen on the top right of the slide, show that the further away the solid black line is from the center of the spiderweb, the more stakeholders valued those attributes. Importantly, what I found was that stakeholder preferences did not differ by group. And so this means, or suggests, that stakeholder preferences are not a barrier to choosing or recommending interventions across the health system. Finally, in the third phase of my research, I prioritized osteoarthritis interventions. First, I rated the performance of interventions on the attributes. And then second, I measured the amount of alignment or overlap between intervention performance and stakeholder preferences. The more overlap, the higher they were prioritized. The results on the bottom right of the slide tell us that stakeholders want exercise programs, first-line therapy, drug therapies, second-line intervention, and self-management and education programs, first-line intervention, and total joint replacement, third-line intervention. So what does this mean? Well, this tells us that not all recommended interventions for managing osteoarthritis align with what people want. Ultimately, this information helps us to understand what drives the choice of osteoarthritis interventions and can help inform health policymakers about which interventions to offer across the New Zealand public health system. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I enjoyed your body language. Your presentation style was really nice, and the way you explained the research, I was very interested with your methodology. The only thing I would say is that the use of jargon was a little bit, distanced me somewhat from the content of what you were saying.
Thanks, Jason. I thought we got a really nice full story of your research in terms of the background and what you did and through to the results. I loved some of the graphics on your slide. Quite busy though, but some excellent graphics there to make those points. Thank you.
Jason, I thought you had a really clever title. You combined the practitioner perspective and the patient perspective really well there, so we knew exactly what it was you were going to talk about and what you were trying to do. Also, I thought you're a very calm presenter. There was no evidence whatsoever that you were nervous at all. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, despite what the slide says, we have Jeff Doherty, which was also easier to say, so I was happy about that. Jeff is a PhD candidate in the Department of Zoology, and he is talking about the suicidal cricket and the hairworm. Over to you when you're ready.
Judges and audience members, I'd like all of you to pretend that you're a cricket. Now, as a cricket, you eat many things, including dead insects. They must be good for you, right? Well, unfortunately, if you're a cricket, maybe not, because that dead insect you just ate contained a tiny dormant hairworm, which is part of a very specialized group of parasites. Now that hairworm is inside you, and it has woken up. During the next couple of months, it consumes your body fluids and grows inside you until it matures and is ready to mate. However, the hairworm can only mate in water, which is a problem because it's stuck inside you, a land-loving insect. The hairworm does have a solution to this, though, and it kind of sounds like a theme picked out of a science fiction novel. It uses mind control. Somehow, the hairworm hijacks your tiny cricket brain, and as a result, you start walking around aimlessly like a zombie, which brings you sooner or later into a puddle of water, where you drown. Lo and behold, the hairworm that had spent several weeks inside you then coils out your back end and swims away, leaving behind your floating corpse without even a second thought. Now, I know that this sad story sounds unbelievable, but the changes in your behavior caused by the hairworm that brought you into water are one of the most well-known examples of what researchers call parasite manipulation. But despite its notoriety, little research has been done on this fascinating phenomenon, and we don't really know how hairworms do it. And that's where I'm focusing my research. I want to understand how hairworms interact with their insect hosts and drive them into water. In order to accomplish this, I'm currently replicating the hairworm's complex life cycle in the laboratory in order to infect different insect species and study their behaviors under controlled experiments as the hairworm grows and matures inside them. And by using powerful analytical tools, we will attempt to identify the biochemical pathways manipulated by the hairworm that are ultimately responsible for your demise as a cricket. This could open new doors for studies on parasites that manipulate animal behavior, which includes human behavior, by the way. But if we discover how hairworms really cause these suicidal behaviors in their hosts, perhaps that they secrete a deadly cocktail of zombifying molecules, my project may provide new insight on some of the fundamental aspects of behavior itself, which to this day remain largely a mystery. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. That was scarily disturbing and quite gruesome.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. I definitely wanted to know more, and I absolutely loved your slide. Thank you.
That was a fantastic explanation for the layperson. It was really nice and sharp and concise. And as Rachel said, I never thought I would say this, but I actually want to know more about hairworms now.
That's good.
Yes, for a lay audience, it's definitely very engaging and very kind of lurid and frightening story. So yeah, thanks for that. I absolutely want to know more, and I thought that it was good that you touched on a bigger picture. You know, how does it influence? How is our behavior influenced? Was a really interesting thing to bring in towards the end.
Thank you. I think I simultaneously want to know more and don't want to know more. And one thing I do know is I'm never going to eat anything made out of cricket flour, though. That I'm sure of. It was brilliant, thank you very much. Next up, we have Karun Rawat, and Karun is doing a PhD in tourism and is looking at emotions experienced by high altitude mountain guides who guide above the death zone. Excellent. Take it away when you are ready.
Ready. For a moment, visualize yourself inside this picture, standing in that queue, and now think, if your occupation was to work in an altitude above 8,000 meters, where less than 40% of oxygen is present than sea level, temperature declines below 40 degrees, and cold winds exceeds up to 60 kilometers per hour. Due to these conditions, science calls this range of altitude as death zone because it is not suitable for human survival. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is one group of occupation, uniquely known as high altitude mountain guides, who works at this range of altitude. Not only this, they live in a small tent over a period of months with less food and sleep. In the meantime, they have to maintain the safety margin of the clients from rapidly changing high altitude weather conditions, staying focused under those circumstances, and still being responsible to lead the expedition successfully and safely. It must be a very stressful situation for them, which is the reason why I wanted to understand the emotion experienced by these guides and how do they manage that. 7 females and 13 males were interviewed from 10 different nationalities. So what I found was, despite these odd working conditions, interestingly, overall they experienced positive emotions such as joy, while they also experienced negative emotions such as fear, sadness, and anger, but they managed that. What struck me then was, under those kind of dangerous situations and stressful circumstances, how do they manage the negative emotion and still have positive experiences? Because there's more to learn from their strategy that can be applied into our daily lives, because as now and then, we all go through some sort of stressful situations. So here's how do they do that. Before every expedition, they plan out the route. Let's say the route is to reach from point A to point B. First, they anticipate what could go wrong in this route. This thoughtful process helps them to identify worst-case scenarios that involve significant risk. Then, they work backwards from B to A in order to avoid the decisions, mistake, and other controllable factors that help to create those scenarios. And they come out with a contingency plan to deal with it. So while they're in the mountain, if something goes wrong, they're mentally prepared with the contingency plan to deal with the eventualities. This way, they manage their negative emotion without getting influenced by it and change their death zone experience into happy zone experiences. To be honest, I applied this strategy to manage my fear by anticipating that I'm presenting in front of this crowd way earlier. If this strategy works for me, works for the guys, the possibilities that it will work for you, try considering it. So what my research brings into this understanding is that how an individual can manage to stay calm under extremely stressful situation and still perform up to the standards, or perhaps even better. Thank you.
I've been fortunate enough to be first for the second commerce presenter.
Thank you.
I feel like you've set this up nicely, Claire. It's a really unique topic, and I thought you gave a really interesting description of, I guess, what we'd call reverse cognitive processing. And you said you used this process yourself. Well, it paid off because you were really confident in your presentation. Well done.
Yes, it managed my nervousness.
Thanks, Karun. I thought it was great setting of the scene, and that was really helped by the slide. You went through your methods and your results. I really enjoyed the feedback about emotions that they were experiencing, and importantly, the application to how we can use that knowledge.
Yep, clear beginning, middle and end, and you, just as we were beginning to ask the question, what could we do with this research, you answered it very well, so thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, next up we have Laura Skilperout. She is from the Department of Sociology, Gender Studies and Criminology in the Humanities Division, and she is doing her PhD there. Her topic for tonight is practicing gender equality, church-going couples' experiences of egalitarianism and tools for counterculture living. Please welcome Laura.
Imagine that walking down this path is a couple named Tom and Susan. They're committed to gender equality in their partnership, and I'm interested in the role Tom plays in this. Tom and Susan represent the couples I interviewed for my study. They're churchgoers, which can sometimes make their commitment to equality seem countercultural. This is because Christian culture has a patriarchal history, often marked by gender-defined responsibilities. For this sociological study, I recruited couples who identify as egalitarian, which is the position that men and women are of equal intrinsic value before God. There are no gender-defined responsibilities as to what each can fulfill. But I come back to Tom because I'm interested in the role men play in establishing equal partnerships with women. Within literature, there's a pattern that shows that in heterosexual relationships, it is the man who plays an essential role in initiating and implementing equality. And what I've discovered is that for participants like Tom, their religious beliefs actually help them be countercultural and enhance their commitment to equality. So, what does egalitarian masculinity look like? Well, based off my male participants, number one, they're not attached to the idea of being masculine or a man's man, and instead opt for a kind of gender-blind attitude. Number two, they consider it important to give away power and be sacrificial. This is often informed by their Christian spirituality, which focuses on escalating the needs of others above their own. Number three, they consider the mental load of the household, like Tom, who knows what chores need to be done, what groceries need to be bought. He doesn't need Susan to tell him what to do. In fact, the idea of being labeled a helping husband makes him cringe. And lastly, number four, the male participants are either pro-feminist or identify as feminists, having taken the time to deconstruct loaded terms like feminism. As I continue to study my couples, words from poet Edwina Gately come to mind. There was no path, so I trod one. My couples tread. They take deliberate steps to enact their beliefs about gender egalitarianism, both men and women. And for anyone desiring equal partnerships, religious or non-religious, I think taking the time to learn conceptual and practical tools of how to do that is valuable. And I can't help but notice a sense of freedom these couples enjoy, empowered to be themselves outside of gendered expectations. And so, like them,
Do we have what it takes to tread? Thank you.
Thanks very much. That was a really engaging presentation. I thought it was interesting how you married the two ideas of the Christianity and the gender equality wasn't really something that I'd thought about before, and also enjoyed how you finished with that question and you threw it back at us. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. A really excellent presentation. I like the way you described the problem in quite lay terms. So for some of us seeing that title, it would have been like, what is this going to be about? But you broke it down really nicely, and I thought the slide was an excellent complement to it as well. So I was actually wrapped all the way through. Thank you.
You're a really lovely presenter in that you don't rush, you're very clear, easy to follow, and you've got a really nice technique that you've used there of taking a memorable piece from a poem and using it to help us cement some meaning around what it is that you're doing. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I felt sure that egalitarian masculinity was going to have something to do with those skinny jeans that we all know Lisa likes. I was wrong, but nevertheless interested. So thank you very much for a great presentation. Lucky last, our final doctoral presenter is Victoria Purdy. Victoria is from the Department of Food Science and doing her doctorate there. She is going to be talking to us about fingerprinting New Zealand hops. Oh, this is going to be up Rachel's alley. She likes a tipple. Can we expand the New Zealand hops industry? Give a warm welcome to Victoria.
New Zealand often gets left off the world map. Some New Zealand knowledge you can add to your basket today is that New Zealand has more breweries per capita than the US, UK, and Australia. There has been a 64% increase in breweries over the last 5 years. With an increase in breweries and beer festivals, there is no hiding that craft beer is a massive trend at the moment. These craft beers are packed full of flavour. But what is causing this flavour? It is a combination between the malt, yeast, and, most importantly, hops. Hops are a flower produced by the Humulus lupulus plant. They have been known for decades to produce the bitterness in the beer, and the science behind this has been well studied. What has had less study is the aroma compounds. Now, this is what gives the beer those interesting flavours. Bringing this back to New Zealand, our current hop breeding program can take up to 10 years to produce a new hop variety. Although the lengthy time, we have been able to produce some very uniquely flavoured hops that are highly sought after. However, we produce less than 1% of the world's hops. That's where I come in. I was fortunate enough to collect my own samples from the Tasman region, where a majority of New Zealand hops are grown. Using these samples, I apply a fingerprinting approach to detect as many aroma compounds as possible. Just like the human fingerprint, I am able to identify the hops and how they are unique from one another. So, what does all of this mean? Once I have pieced together all of the fingerprinting information, I can then share this with the hop growers so they can better understand what their hops are made of. This information can also be used by the hop breeders to help them produce even more uniquely flavoured hops and hopefully decrease the amount of time it takes to produce those new hop varieties. If we can scientifically prove that New Zealand is a fantastic place to breed and grow hops, we will be able to expand the industry hugely and create a name for ourselves on the hop map.
Thank Thanks, Victoria. Now, as a geographer, I am a bit concerned about initially New Zealand being left off the map and then the blob that is New Zealand on your map. Surely there's a climatic effect in there. No, seriously, great presentation, excellent body language. You took quite a long time to get around the background. I wanted to know a bit more about the actual fingerprinting, but this is always good to leave us wanting to know more. Thanks.
Thanks, Victoria. I really enjoyed the New Zealand context in here. Who knew that we had more breweries than all of those other places? I really thought it was important that you gave us the practical implications of your work. So you didn't just show us the scientific side. You showed us how perhaps we can make the hop industry more economically viable in New Zealand. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed your presentation style, and the real-world implications came across really well. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, I think you'll all agree that when I said that the state of graduate research was in good hands at the University of Otago right at the beginning, I was right. As I like to say in my house, I'm always right. This I was particularly right about. So what we'll have next is the judges' deliberation, but before we do that, I just want everyone to join together one more time to give everyone a fantastically big round of applause. Truly impressive and, yep. Oh, wait, Robin, can't you wait? Good Lord. I don't know, these PVCs, it's outrageous. All right, we'll get to that. So the judges are going to go off and do their deliberation. Robin is champing at the bit there, so we'll get on with the voting for the people's choice. The graduate research ambassadors who are at the back are going to come and collect your voting documents, and then they will tally them up. You can't bribe them, only her. But she's going to go off to do the deliberation, and we will be back shortly to find out the winners of tonight's events.
Kia ora. I know you're all waiting with bated breath for this. Firstly, because I know she won't thank herself, but if you could just join with me. We have Claire back every year for a reason. She makes a terrific MC. So if you just join with me in thanking Claire for her. Well, I think the standard just keeps getting better each year. And as judges, we found it, really tough to separate out some of the contestants. I think you're all fantastic. Nobody got lost in their presentation. I think that's probably the first year we've had nobody sort of trip up or have a massive pause. So I think you all did a terrific job on those presentations. Loved hearing about the research. It was fantastic. Okay, without further ado, we are going to get into the awards. So the winner. And actually, if Drew is here somewhere, Drew. Oh, yes, over here. So Drew's going to give the winner the certificate and the envelope. So the winner of the Masters section of the 2019 University of Otago 3-minute Thesis Grand Final, they get a research award of $500 from the Graduate Research School, and courtesy of Hello World Dunedin, an air travel voucher to the value of $250. So the Masters winner this year is Jonah Belk. Stand here for a photo. Congratulations, well done. The winner of the Doctoral section of the 2019 University of Otago 3-minute Thesis Grand Final receives a research award of $750 from the Graduate Research School, and courtesy of Hello World Dunedin, air travel to the Brisbane competition for the Asia Pacific 3MT final at the University of Queensland. The doctoral winner is Cassie Styonu. The People's Choice winner receives a $250 research award funded jointly by the Graduate Research School and courtesy of Hello World Dunedin. They get a travel suitcase. The People's Choice is Jeff Doherty.
Thank you, Rachel. Well done to the winners and well done to everyone. It has really been a very successful evening and the research is impressive and you've all done very well. It takes a lot to coordinate a 3MT and there are a number of people to thank. Firstly, I'd like to thank teams in events and marketing and also in GRS for their hard work in organising the 3MT contest. Particular thanks are owed to Andrew Loney. Well done for going and seeing all the heats and judging those and doing a lot of organisation. Awesome, and thanks particularly to Jasminda for doing all the background stuff as well. It's been brilliant having you both on board and doing all that work. Thank you too to the judges of the heats and to all those who participated in those heats. A big thank you is also owed to our sponsor Hello World Dunedin and I'd like to thank you, the audience, for coming along and supporting the students, your friends and your colleagues. And I'd like to thank the judges for their insightful adjudication. I think that David had to leave early to consider my screenplay ideas and I'm looking forward to hearing from him very, very soon. Finally, a big thank you and a huge congratulations to the finalists. Getting to this final, getting this far is a huge accomplishment and you all did tremendously well. You should be very proud of yourselves. I know we all are. Please join me and give one more acknowledgement to the awesome work that our team of graduate research candidates are doing. Now, I think Sharon will kill me if I don't say that you guys have to come down here for a photo. And I think that there is for supporters of you, for you and your supporters, an event at the Staff Club and everybody is welcome to attend that as well. That's it from me, you'll be relieved to know. Thank you very much.